and good morning. Welcome to Community Voice. I'm your host, Josh Engel. Today is Monday, February 17th. I'm filling in for the boss man today, Mr. Steve Granick. He is unfortunately detained, so I'm going to be very proudly hosting this morning's program with Zaneta Jones. And she is on the program today to share a personal story about her experience with fentanyl. And I feel like this is a perfect time for this program as not very long from now, coming up on March 6th, will be the third annual Carroll County Fentanyl Awareness Coalition Awareness Summit. The previous 2 years have been very well received, well attended, and we were very blessed to have Zaneta speak at the last Fentanyl Awareness Summit. See, I'm going to just keep stuttering over my words. I did want to remind everyone that this morning's interview with Zaneta Jones is currently being live streamed on our WLBB News Talk 1330 Facebook page. So if you have any questions or comments or kudos, compliments, anything for Ms. Zaneta, please leave that in the chat. I'd be happy to read those out to her. And of course, we're also going to be uploading the podcast of this episode to this station's website as well as gradicommunications.com. But we're so blessed to have Zaneta with us. Good morning, Zaneta.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you again for waking up bright and early and coming on the program. Before we get into it, how about you tell our listeners at home a bit about yourself?
Okay. So my name is Zaneta Jones. I am the assistant general manager at One Life Fitness. I am 41 years old. I have 3 children. I really just work a lot and take care of my kids. There really isn't much exciting about me anymore.
I don't know. Working at One Life Fitness is pretty exciting. That place is wild.
It definitely is.
I really like that movie theater room.
Yes. A lot of people do.
Oh, yeah. I remember watching many Fast and the Furious movies in air conditioning, feeling like I was getting one over on fitness, But that's awesome. So how long have you been at One Life Fitness?
I've been there for 4 years. I'm going to be going into my 5th year.
Excellent.
Yes.
So you work at the gym where our boss, Steve Granick, goes.
Yes.
So he has had the chance to speak with you a bit and, of course, see your presentation at last year's Fentanyl Awareness Summit. It's just so cool to have you in here. So why don't we just get right into it? If we could, maybe take us back to the beginning. This is a personal story. This is your life experience. And as we spoke a bit before the program, it's amazing how many folks have come up to you after the fact. Folks that either that were at the summit or saw the live stream and came up to you and expressed gratitude and expressed, feeling like they've been seen. A lot of folks have individuals in their lives that they care deeply about that have dealt with afflictions, and it's very tough to overcome those things. So this is without a doubt a superhero origin story because of all the things that you've overcome. So if you could, take us back to the beginning.
Okay. So when it came to that and my round with everything that comes along with it, I was really young. I had some medical issues at a really young age. I was 12 or 13 years old and was diagnosed with problems with my ovaries and situations like that. And I had a doctor prescribe me Darvocet. People don't probably have any idea what that is now because this was a long time ago, but it was a narcotic pain pill right under what everybody knows.
Like hydrocodone and stuff below that.
And I was on them and they were supposed to help with the pain and everything like that. And then as I got older, I was still on these pills and of course they weren't working anymore. My mom was also an addict at the time. So there were a lot of pills, just around. So my mom's first instinct was just, here, take this, or, oh, you're hurting, let's take this, or your head hurts, here, take some of these. And so it was just this buildup of constant medication all the time. And at that time I was really just in middle school. As I got older and into high school and I played sports and I did cheerleading, and then my body would hurt or I would get injured, and then here they would come and doctors would write them, or I would get a shot before competition or whatever. And then
just to get you through.
Yes. And then by by the time I was 17, pills weren't working anymore. Like, I was taking a lot of them. So somebody introduced me to heroin. And it was wonderful. Like, it changed my life in like some crazy way of all the emotional stuff that I was dealing with throughout my childhood, and having a mother as an addict, and my father, who was amazing, was still like undiagnosed bipolar alcoholic. So like there was a lot of chaos all the time, and I was practically raising my little brother. So like with all of the trauma and the issues,
the pressure.
Yes. So it actually like calmed everything down. It was like the storm that was inside, and I did this, and it was the most peaceful feeling in the world. And I felt like I could float and nothing was wrong. And from there, it just was a mess. I always managed to keep a job. I always managed to stay in school. I always managed to do those things. I was taught at a very young age by my mother, as long as it looks good on the outside, it doesn't matter what's going on the inside. So everything was just a pretty little package that was presented, and I was the epitome of that. I graduated from high school with honors, and I went straight into college and was still working. All the meanwhile, I was on heroin.
And I think it's important that folks realize you can listen to interviews with the chemist Hamilton Morris, and I think he does a very good job sort of breaking down folks' perspectives of these individual items. People don't realize, people think heroin, they think, oh, some cat slumped over in Seattle. They don't realize that there are lawyers, judges,
Correct.
Professionals, police officers, all kind of folks who have this secret where they're essentially self-medicating with something like heroin, and you wouldn't even realize because at the time, it's the pretty package you're talking about.
Well, correct. But it also gets to a point when you're on it that you can't function without it. So I know people have heard about like addicts saying that they are using to stay well. They're no longer getting high. That's where I was. And I was off and on for 20 years. So like for the next almost 20 years of my life, I kept running back to it. Like I would get sober for a little bit because I would be thrown into a rehab, or I would get in trouble and I'd end up in jail, or whatever the situation was. And then I would go right back into it. There was was never taught that like what I'm feeling and what I'm dealing with and all these things, how to live with it and how to handle all those things. So as I got older, and I'm constantly going back and I'm using, and my life is a mess, and it just felt like I was never going to be there. By the time I was 18 years old, I had already had one child. By the time I was 20, I had a second one. And by the time I was 24, my parents were raising them. So I lost, like it didn't matter what it looked like on the outside. It was all still falling apart. I thought I was in control, but I was never in control.
It's like you're spinning a bunch of plates, and every once in a while, something's going to fall and break.
Absolutely.
But now, and just to kind of get some clarification, so do you remember, were any of your arrests, did any arrests happen before this time? And were they drug related, or were they usually something else?
Never had a drug charge, as crazy as that sounds. They were absolutely drug related, but they weren't about drugs. I was on drugs, and I was out doing stupid things to get drugs. Or my parents one time had me arrested because they didn't like the people I was hanging out with. So they thought that if they were to have me arrested, then maybe I could get clean and come home, or things like that. So there was just a spiral of everything, but it was absolutely drug related. Every time, whether or not I have any drug related charges, it all revolved around the drugs that I was on.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is so now you're looking around the your mid 20s. You have some children. So everything that is happening in your life, it's like everything, all the decisions that are being made, they're going to have to go through the filter of heroin. Was it predominantly heroin, or were there some other narcotics mixed in?
So there was absolutely just anything, really. Like, obviously, heroin was the one that I was always running back to, but there would be days that you couldn't get it, or there were things going on. So, like, it didn't matter. anything to either kill the pain of the withdrawal or anything to just stay numb or stay high, I was going to take it. Like, I know in rehab and stuff like that, we joke and call them like pocket junkies. So like if it's in your pocket, we're going to take it. But like, it's legit. I was that. It didn't matter what it was. I was mixing them. I was doing my own thing. I'm lucky to be alive at the rate that I was going, especially at that time in my life.
Wow. I'll tell you what, since it's 8:40, we'll go ahead and take our first commercial break. I'm getting zoned into the story. I don't want to take a break, but let's go ahead and get that out of the way so we can come back. We're going to hear a quick word from our sponsors and come back and continue this story with Zaneta Jones as we discuss her personal story about her experience with fentanyl. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System and Oak Mountain Academy.
The World Language Scholar Journey at Oak Mountain Academy is designed to provide students with a clearly defined, curriculum-based track to acquire essential knowledge and skills for success in biliteracy fields of study. The successful completion of this journey provides colleges with a method to recognize a rigorous foreign language immersion experience for all students at Oak Mountain Academy. I'm Patrick Duran, head of school, inviting you to journey with us on the mountain. For more information, visit us at oakmountain.us. Discover your journey at OMA. Prepare, explore, and achieve.
Consider the Mobius strip. Take a strip of paper, twist it, connect the ends. This connection forms a continuous loop. Seamless, infinite. That's how your healthcare should be too. At Tanner Health, the Mobius is our symbol and our promise, representing our continuum of care and our commitment that the services you need will be here for you always. We're not just changing healthcare, we're redefining it. See more at tanner.org.
And we're back to Community Voice. Today is Monday, February 17th. If you're tuning in, we are in the midst of our interview with Zaneta Jones, a very brave gal that is willing to come on the program and share a bit about her personal story with addiction and fentanyl in preparation for the upcoming third annual Carroll County Fentanyl Awareness Summit Fentanyl Coalition. The Fentanyl Coalition's Awareness Summit, which is coming up on March 6th at City Station. So let's jump right back into it. So, so you're at this point in your life where, you're mixing a few different things. I mean, if you can get your hands on it, you're going to use it. So, you have, you're working multiple jobs. You're working very hard to try to just sort of stay afloat and keep the plate spinning that you have spinning here. Yes. Could you speak maybe a bit about the kind of the costs involved? Because this fentanyl, or just fentanyl in general, heroin, the heroin at this point, had you dabbled in fentanyl in your
Not
20s?
at that time. So
Okay.
fentanyl didn't come until a little later, but
heroin.
Yeah, I mean, even in general, and plus people have to remember this was like early 2000s, and fentanyl it was around, but it was more of at the time, it just wasn't as accessible as it is now.
It was pretty much exclusively medical applications,
Correct.
like surgery and stuff.
So back then, it just wasn't what was out there on the streets. It was a lot of meth and it was a lot of heroin. Fentanyl didn't come out until way later, which I definitely got involved with. The moment it changed, I changed with it. But when it came to pricing and things like that, I always had a job. I always worked my way up fast. It's just always been my MO. I go into a job and I am the best always. And I would go in and months later, I would all of a sudden be in a management position. So I'd always have an income, but of course that income was always going out. So I would spend sometimes $10, $20 if I'm broke, or I've spent as much as $500, $600 a day. It just really would depend on what my income looked like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So at this point, so we're looking around the mid-20s. Had you been into rehab yet?
Yes. So I went into rehab in between my two children being born. I missed my oldest daughter's first birthday. I had a mental breakdown from all of the drug use. My whole mental capacity was so bad, and I hit a point where I just didn't want to live anymore, and I took anything that I could find. And their father at the time, my children's father at the time, came home from work and found me. And I was pretty unresponsive. And when they rushed me to the hospital, and they had to pump my stomach and they had to get it all out of me. And then, of course, after that, somehow between him and my family managed to talk them out of like committing me right then. I don't know how it happened, but they managed to not get me committed. And then a week later, my whole family and his family kind of like gang forces, and they sent me to a place. It's actually pretty local, but they sent me somewhere. It was really nice. I thought it was going to work. I'd come out and like I was working a program. I was there for 5 months, something like that. And I was feeling better, and I was actually working a program, and I was a parent, and I was working, and I was in this relationship, and life was normal for a little while. And I got pregnant with my second daughter. So through that, I was still sober after she was born. I went right back into it. Like, they give you pain pills after a pregnancy, and it just spiked that right back up, and went right back out. Of course, it ruined that whole relationship. Do I blame it all on me? No. But is a big part of it my fault? Absolutely. We were very toxic for each other. He and I actually went into like dealing drugs, and he wasn't ever a user, but he liked the fast money, so it made it really easy all around.
And that means it was always around, you know.
Absolutely. And we got into that. And then DFACS stepped in. My babies were really little. My parents ended up with my kids. So after that, my dad, who looked me in the face around that time, and he pretty much told me that I was done. I was done when it came to my children. I was going to stop dragging them through the mud. He was going to do whatever it was that he had to do to make sure that my kids were taken care of. And I am forever grateful for the day that he looked me in the face and he cut me completely off. At the time, I was upset, and these are my kids too, and whatever. But now, knowing that my kids did not have to get drugged through that, and they were raised by two people that loved them and took care of them, and just unconditional.
It's hard to tell someone you love that I have to cut you out. That's how much I love you. I don't want to, but.
And he did. And 12 years, I didn't see my kids for 12 years.
Wow.
Because I couldn't stop. I would stop, and I would get sober for a little while, and I would beg my dad to see my kids, and he would tell me no because he didn't believe anything changed, and then I would use that as an excuse, and I would go back out or something else. And I would do this, and I did that for 12 years before I was able to have any communication with my children. By the time I hit 30, I had a son with a one-night stand. I tried to have a relationship with this man because he managed to get me sober for a while to get through this pregnancy and do all these things, and I just thought he had saved me, so I thought, well, maybe I should give this a try, and it was a huge mistake, but my son was not. My son saved my life, and he's done it numerous times. By the time he was 2 years old, I was so heavy into, this is when I about started dabbling in fentanyl, about 30. Between heroin, meth, and fentanyl, DFACS stepped in and removed my son. I couldn't pass a drug test. There was so much going on at the time. They told me that I could either go to rehab, and this was in 2017. They told me I could go to rehab for a year, or I could go to prison for a year. And I chose rehab, obviously, because who's going to choose to go to prison? They found a place. They literally picked me up, drove me there, and dropped me off. And it was an inpatient place. It was 3 hours away. And it was the absolute best thing that's ever happened to me. So from that moment is when I realized I could not do this anymore. I was able to deal with my trauma, and I was able to heal from a lot that has happened throughout the years. And I was able to get my son back, but that took a lot of time. At one point while I was there, I decided that even though I was working to get my son back, at one point I realized I'm not ready to have my son, and he needs to stay where he's at until I can have him. And I ended up being there for 18 months.
Wow.
And at some point during that time, the rehab I was at, once you get the custody and stuff back or you're fighting for it, they can come stay with you there. So I was able to get my son back. He was in foster care for a year and a half, 18 months. He stayed with me there, and I have been sober since 2017.
Wow.
I met a man around that time. His name was Nicholas. He was also in the program. We were in a lot of the same things. I was able to get back on my feet, and not expected at all, not expected to meet this man. He came in. He loved my son. There was just so much that was going on. It was, at the time, I thought it was the worst thing I was doing, was to like be freshly sober and different for the first time in 20 years. And then here I am looking like I'm falling back into old patterns. And I wasn't. He was an amazing man. And 2 years ago, he just passed from a fentanyl overdose.
Oh, no. But yet this was after you found sobriety, and you've maintained it since 2017.
Yes. So,
oh, wow.
He and I went through COVID together. Like, we did, our sobriety was still really strong. We ended up moving out this way because I was able to have my dad passed, and I was able to have some communication with my girls. And that's when like our relationship started to pick up. So I moved back out this way to be local with my children and to be able to start building that relationship. And when we made that big move, there was a lot going on. Of course, COVID happened and everybody's jobs were down and everyone was kind of stuck and all of that. And he picked up during COVID. And at first I didn't really know. I know obviously if people say like, you were on it for so long and you should have known. I think a part of me knew and I didn't want to see it and things like that. And then COVID slowed down and he started working for a company through Georgia Power and somebody on his crew, and he was in and out of like hotels and they were working and they were getting high. And most of the time it was when he wasn't there or at home, he was working. And it got to a point where when I found out, I pretty much told him, like, you have to go get sober because I'm going to end up messing up and our son is going to I'm not going to let him live the life that, like, I'm just not going to let this happen. And his mom and I got together and we drove him one place and he walked out. And then it was that same cycle of, it was so crazy to be on the other side of what I did to everybody for so long.
Whoa.
And then here we are and the roles are switched. And here I am understanding what I put everybody through is what this did.
Here, we'll go ahead and take our last commercial break, but when we come back, we'll wrap up our conversation with Zaneta Jones as she continues sharing her personal story with addiction right here on Community Voice, brought to you by Tanner Health System and Oak Mountain Academy.
The Entrepreneur Scholar Journey at Oak Mountain Academy is designed to provide students with a clearly defined curriculum-based track to acquire essential knowledge and skills for success in business and leadership. Critical areas include identifying entrepreneurial characteristics, selecting a value position, and business model development. I'm Patrick Uran, head of school, inviting you to journey with us on the mountain. For more information, visit us at oakmountain.us. Discover your journey at OMA. Prepare, explore, and achieve.
Consider the Mobius strip. Take a strip of paper, twist it, connect the ends. This connection forms a continuous loop. Seamless, infinite. That's how your healthcare should be too. At Tanner Health, the Mobius is our symbol and our promise, representing our continuum of care and our commitment that the services you need will be here for you always. We're not just changing healthcare, we're redefining it. See more at tanner.org.
Welcome back to Community Voice. Monday, February 17th, we're about to wrap up our conversation with Zaneta Jones and her personal story with addiction. She spoke at last year's Carroll County Fentanyl Awareness Coalition's Awareness Summit. And this year's Fentanyl Awareness Summit is going to be March 6th at City Station, so that's coming up. We're very pleased that Zaneta was willing to share her story both last year at the summit and with us right now. So picking up where we left off, we have about 4 minutes.
Gotcha.
So, here you were on the other end trying to help Nicholas find sobriety. What happened?
He got high and he couldn't stop getting high. We got him into a sober living facility very quickly because I know we're running out of time. We got him into a sober living facility in North Carolina. We thought if we could change all the things that it would work. And he got clean for about 6 months out there. He picked up, and within 2 days, they found him face down in a creek. A passerby actually found him. He had left and gotten high. And that's the biggest problem, is that when people get sober, they don't realize that you cannot, especially with fentanyl, you cannot pick it back up like where you were. He had been clean. He picked up and thought he could use the exact same amount, and it was over with.
I know it happens a lot with individuals. They'll overdose. They'll eat the charcoal. They'll pump their stomachs, and then they leave, and then the high's gone, and they don't realize it's still in their system. So they try to do a little more, and then it's overdose. It's just terrible. I'm so sorry that happened.
Yeah, it's been hard. It's been 2 years since he's passed. 2.5 now. We live with his memory every day. We know, I understand better than anything the fight that he was going through. Of course, my son is completely heartbroken. He's still living with the man that raised him from a very young age as his dad, living with that. But it also kind of pushes me to know that I don't ever want to be there. I want to be present for my children. I want to be present for things that I missed out on my whole life. And I am beyond blessed and lucky to know that that wasn't my end and that wasn't my story.
And talk about, the constant, reinforcement to be the very best for your kids, for your family. We only probably have about 1.5 minutes left. If you could, please leave our listeners with some final words, any advice, anything you want to share to them, something maybe they should take from this story.
If anybody is having this problem, just know that there is help. There are so many places. There are free places. There are places you can go to just detox. Just know that some people are not as lucky as others, and everybody is going to end up in one of 3 places, and that's jail, that is death, or, oh my gosh, my brain just shut down. I'm sorry.
Sobriety.
Or you're going to end up sober, and the lifestyle is amazing. I have never thought that I would ever be here. I thought at one point in my life I was going to die, and I was going to die from probably an overdose because I lived that way for so long.
But you didn't.
Yeah. You
didn't, because you are strong, and you are powerful, and you're a good mother, and you are a great daughter, and look at what you've overcome. Folks don't realize that not everybody starts off at the same place, and some folks have these genetic biological factors contributing to any addiction and struggle they may have, but you've overcome them. And Zaneta, so very proud of you. We're out of time. Thank you for coming on this program today. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. We will see you on March 6th at the Carroll County Fentanyl Awareness Coalition's Awareness Summit.
National headlines and the local stories.